Oh, isn't that beautiful?
It's very beautiful, really.
Look at that
very
cover.
beautiful cover. Yes.
How nice.
A beautiful orange.
Very.
Very beautiful. Okay, so we can begin. And I would like to thank you very much for being with us today for Elephant Fest, to talk about your book, Blood Orange, which appeared in Romania this year at Editura Litera Publishing House. And I was very surprised because I didn't read a lot of thrillers till now, but I was very captured. I read it in one day.
Oh, wow.
And yes, it's a very good thriller, psychological thriller. And it's my first question. When did you decide that you would become a thriller writer? I mean, why this choice? It's difficult. I mean, really.
It seems to be how I write, my manner of writing. I have a feeling if I tried to write even an uplit or something very happy, it would go very dark very quickly. I don't mean it to, but it's just how my mind works. And I think I have quite a dark imagination, and my writing style. And it's also, I think, you know, that they say that you should write the books that you like to read. I mean, I have spent my life reading psychological thrillers and crime novels, so in a way it seemed the most sort of obvious destination for me. I mean, I have to say, when I first started, I was writing books which were more like feminist dystopias, yes, but they weren't very good, and the aspect of them that I liked the most was the sort of the sense of threat and the building sinister kind of atmosphere, and so I found really that is it's the most fun for me to write, and I'm very lucky that it's a popular it's such a popular genre at the moment. You know, that it's a very pleasant coincidence.
I told you it's okay. I told you I couldn't put down the book because your novel has a lot of twists, but a lot of twists. In the end, I mean, in the last 100 pages, you change everything. You're a little shocked as a reader. Did you know from the very beginning of your novel which would be the end, or did you change it? No. I mean,
I knew the end scene. I knew what I wanted to. I knew what would happen, and the reason that the title would be revealed. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know until I was about 2/3 of the way through who it was going to happen to, because I had a choice, and it could have been one or the other. And it, as the book developed and as I wrote it and I got to know the characters better and better, that was when it became clear to me who it was, to whom it should happen. If I don't want to be too specific, but the destination was clear, but not all of the details.
Of course, it's very difficult to speak about this book because we can make a spoiler, so we don't want to do that. I will try not to do that, but I want to, really. And I'd like to talk about your character, Alison. She's quite a character. I mean, I don't even know if I love her or hate her. You either love her or either you hate her. You approve some of her actions, you disapprove some of her actions. You don't know how to understand this woman. What were your intentions with Alison?
I'm very fond of her. Okay. I mean, you know, that I think that I think she makes terrible choices. That much is clear, but the context in which she makes the terrible choices, I feel, gives some explanation for her behavior. And I think that the main thing to remember, and the thing I've always wanted to say to readers when they're critical of her and say that they hate her, is that it's written from her point of view. We're inside her head throughout the duration of the book. And there is no one who hates Alison more than Alison herself. You know, she has so much self-loathing because she knows that she's not living up to any of her own standards of behavior. that she knows that she isn't doing a good enough job really at anything. She feels that she's failing at everything around her. And so there's an awful lot of self-laceration and self-scorn that runs through it. And what I wanted her arc by the end was, I mean, again, without sort of wanting to go into spoilers, I felt that if we could end up with a feeling of fondness and perhaps some understanding by the end, that would not necessarily be such a bad thing, because actually we can all leap to judgment very easily on others, and perhaps we shouldn't. Perhaps we should sort of hold back a little and try and explore what the context of someone else's life is. You know, it's never as simple as black and white. And I will say that actually one criticism that is leveled at her very frequently is that she's a bad mother. But I was very careful when I wrote it to ensure that at no point did she actually do anything that was bad mothering, in the sense that she, with the exception of getting a time wrong, which actually there's more to it than that, she actually is absolutely devoted to her daughter, and I think treats her daughter very well throughout. And it's, but because she feels bad about how she's doing, and she doesn't think she's spending enough time, and she's dogged by, you know, that guilt that many working mothers have, that they're not doing enough. That's the way that we see her, through her own eyes, and they're a very, very harsh judge.
You said in an interview about talking about Alison that she is somehow Lady Macbeth trying to scrub off the blood clot. And I'm thinking of Alison trying to be a better person, a better mother, but she fails all the time. And then I thought, this is real life. A lot of women like that.
Yeah.
Did you have for inspiration women around you?
Myself as a starting point. You know, that a lot of research went into those hangovers. And I think that really all of us have on occasion. I mean, you know, perhaps our behavior has never been as egregious as Alison's, and I mean, of course it's fiction, so you have to crank it up. But I think that, I mean, every single one of my friends would put their hands up to moments when they've fallen short. You know, when they've been later home than they said, they've drunk more than they planned, you know, they've fallen off the diet train, they've not exercised. You know, we are all, you know, surrounded by these very high standards of behavior that are expected of us. And you know, frankly, none of us is perfect. Nobody is perfect. Everybody has flaws. And it's a very harsh environment where we're held up to this incredibly high standard that we're expected to be perfect all the time. And nobody can do it. You know, it's really difficult. It's really difficult. And that was something I really wanted to try and examine through the book.
Actually, everything in your characters seems to be too much. They drink too much, they smoke too much, they work too much, they have sex in train toilets. That was a little shocking. Okay, so they seem not to have equilibrium. Everything is excessive.
Yes. I think that's right. That's absolutely right. She is out of balance. And I mean, and really, if you don't have if the central character of, particularly of a thriller, I mean, really one of the sort of the most essential components of a novel is to see the arc the character travels, and to see if they change and what circumstances are that cause them to change. And I feel that if you were to start with somebody who wasn't out of balance, you wouldn't actually end up having a terribly interesting story. If she, you know, at the beginning of at the end of the first chapter, when she says that she is just going to have one drink, that's it, and then she's going to go home, it's not what happens, you know. And if she did stop at one drink and just go home, then we wouldn't actually have the rest of the book to do. And I mean, and again, you know, by the end, we would hope, I think, if we developed any sympathy for her as a character, that we would hope to see her in a better sense of balance and equilibrium by that end.
Mm-hmm. So actually we have Alison's story, but we also have Madeleine's story. And yes. I thought it's kind of mise en abîme. We have a story inside a story. And then I thought, but both Madeleine and both Alison, they have something in common. At one point and in the end, but I can't tell more about the end. No. you wonder and say Alison could have been Madeleine, and Madeleine could have been Alison. You have these two stories. Was it difficult for you to create this story inside a story?
Actually, that bit, I found the building the legal case actually rather more straightforward, just because it's told at slightly more of a remove, you know, because it's told by way of statements and then conversation. We never see inside Madeleine's head. So from that point of view, it was rather more straightforward, just to sort of, that was very much a kind of and then, just to make sure that the facts were all laid out. And actually I found also, because the whole thing, as I said, is from Alison's point of view from beginning to end, that can be quite hard going if you're just sort of constantly going from domestic drama to domestic drama. And so I found when I was writing that whenever I started to get bored with her having rows with Carl or sex in trains, that I could switch over and put her into the trial situation. And then we could move away from that back to her life again when I got bored of that, because, you know, it's nice to sort of see things changing up. And one of the advantages, of course, of having more than one narrator is that you have that sort of change throughout. But in this case, it sort of provides its own momentum. And really, I found, because I was writing it all chronologically, you know, I sort of wrote it as it's read, so I wasn't sort of doing Madeleine's sections separately from Alison's. I found that they both developed organically together as I was sort of developing kind of thematic links, you know, and my subconscious did quite a lot of that too, in terms of the, you know, I'd sort of see something later and think, oh, I drew a parallel there that I hadn't, it hadn't been a deliberate decision so to do, but actually it did tie in quite nicely. So it was, I mean, it made the writing of it, I think, rather more fun than anything else.
Okay, so we talked about women in your book. Let's talk about the men in your book, who are really far from being perfect. I mean, I didn't meet one man in this book who might be a kind person. Okay, we have Patrick, we have Carl, we have Madeleine's husband. Carl seems a good husband. I say seems, and I don't speak anything about the end of the novel. And it's quite shocking for a reader, because we have only negative examples of men. Why aren't they at least kind? I mean,
it was the book I wanted to write. I mean, that are her colleagues at the beginning are nice, though of course they don't play very much of a role. But the people that she has a drink with, one of them, Robert, and I can't remember the name of the other, that's awful, they're very bit parts. So yeah. But they're nice, and I feel that I like James, who's Madeleine and Edwin's son. He's a, you know, he's a nice teenager. But no, this isn't a book about nice men. I think that that's fair to say, and that there is an aspect of almost of settling of schools, that it did come from a place of anger, really. Then I just, because, you know, the more reading I had done about you know, situations of violence against women, and it's hard not to get quite angry, you know, if you spend a lot of time reading about it. So I will ensure the book I've just written, the draft I just finished writing, I have a nice man. I do feel that I need to have I do need to have, and there aren't really very many in my second book, there aren't very many men, but I'm conscious, I certainly don't hate all men, and I certainly don't think that this is this kind of behavior that's typical of everybody. But in this case, yes, I'm sorry, they're all terrible.
Yes,
and
I
there
saw.
it is.
I know. When you read your novel, you feel like watching a movie because you handle very, very well the dialogues. You create scenes like in a movie with precise details. I think right now about the smoke when Carl tells, no, it's actually Alison telling her husband, I feel a cigarette smoking here in the room, and he says, no, it's not, it's you because you smoke. And this is a very important detail for the end of the book. How do you handle these details? I mean, it's very difficult. It's like, I don't know, a Netflix series where you have to pay attention at every single detail.
I don't know how I do it. I mean, that is, because I suppose I've got the whole picture in my mind. I do know what the, I know what the ending is going to be. I know what needs to be seeded at which point. And I mean, and also there is a question of doing a layering, when you go back through the edit, when you've actually got the whole story completely clear in your mind, then you can go back to the beginning and you can put in a little bit more to mislead the reader, or to make them go up a blind alley, or to put the details in. I mean, you just hope what you're writing is getting the point across successfully, and I'm pleased that you think I have, so thank you very much.
Yes,
but
yes. Did you have some moments when you found it difficult to write about what, I don't know, a scene, when you said, no, this is too much, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do this to this character? And you know what I mean, because there are things happening to some main characters. Did you have this in mind at some point? No, I shouldn't have done this with Patrick or with Alison or with Madeleine.
Things got toned down, actually. I have to say that I had much worse things happening, and then because I wrote this novel through my MA, through my master's, and so it went through a lot of workshopping, and I actually had a much worse idea for what things were happening, which I was talked down from because it was thought it would be too horrific. You have to torture your characters, because again, otherwise you have no story. I do feel, I've always felt, oh, poor woman, it's pretty brutal, and I felt very much for Madeleine. I felt Madeleine was in a extraordinarily horrible situation, and I had great sympathy for her. But in order for the book to have any kind of tension, I'm afraid I had to be very, very horrible. So no, I didn't feel bad about it.
Okay. So actually it's a dark psychological thriller with poisonous relationships, with, I don't know, self-destructive ways that characters choose in their lives. We have domestic violence. So there are delicate topics, and once again, it's very familiar. This happens nowadays, domestic violence, and you put it very well in the novel because you are very discreet while talking about this. But we have some scenes which are really, I can't describe them. You know what I mean? Did you inspire from reality a little? I mean, this
no, fortunately
happen around us.
I mean, I am in my own life very fortunate that I have not been treated in this, that the men I've known, and my dear husband, who said to me, they're all going to think it's me, but it really isn't at all. And I mean, I think that it's impossible to be ignorant of the plague of domestic violence and violence against women and girls that besets every country. It's that a woman is killed in the UK, I think every 3 to 4 days by a former or current intimate partner. You know, it's stalking is real, that the plague of it's so prevalent, it's impossible to ignore it. And it's something that makes me, you know, I have a daughter, and not that having a daughter makes one more understanding, but it does just, I am filled with rage when I read any accounts in newspapers of killings, or, you know, those men who kill all of their family, you know, they kill their children. It's just the idea of trying to exert that control over anybody. I just found it's so profoundly shocking, and it's so enraging that it, you know, that informed everything that I was trying. Yes, I was trying to write a thriller that was, you know, it is an entertainment. It is a, you know, it is something that, you know, you'll pick up on holiday perhaps and read, and it's diverting. But there was a very serious message at the heart of it, which was just, you know, I mean, to say it's unacceptable is so weak, but just to try and throw some light on the fact that, you know, these things happen, and they can happen to any person in any walk of life, that you're not immune to it just because you've got a good job or a good education, that you know, anybody can be a victim of this. And I mean, something I found fascinating from the reader reviews that I've read, you know, the less sympathetic ones to Alison are just, you know, they're so horrible. You know, why does she put up with it? Why doesn't she just leave? And you're like, you just don't understand how this works. And that rage, I think, was, you know, that's the rage that kind of simmers through. How dare people treat women like this? You know, how dare men think that this is something that can be done? How dare anybody think that they have the right to control anyone else's behavior? So yes, I mean that in terms of real life inspiration, not directly but indirectly, everything, pretty much everything in that book is something that has happened to, you know, that you can, you know, however dark one's imagination, someone would have done it, you know, someone will have done it in real life, and somebody actually is going to suffer that. And I have to say, actually, the greatest compliment that I've received about this was my osteopath told me that he read it and he recognized the behavior in a friend of his, that her husband was abusive, and that he realized then that they could actually put a name to what the behavior was. And so they gave it, yes, and they gave it to her, and she read it, and she left her husband, and they're getting divorced, which I'm, you know, I know it's awful to say, I'm delighted to hear about a divorce, but in the context of an abusive relationship, the fact that it actually inspired somebody to have the strength to leave is, you know, that's amazing, you know. And that was, you know, if one has a mission for it beyond entertainment, then it certainly achieved that mission, you know. It's
what I felt while reading, and exactly what you are saying. I recognized this pattern around me, at some families, people I know, and I realized that women are really hiding a lot of things. Yes. So for the end, because we are talking for 30 minutes, I would like you to send a message for the readers of Blood Orange. So I really like the cover, really. I mean,
I love the cover. And it's, I always love to see the different languages. It's I mean, it's amazing for me to think that my work's being read, you know. I thought 14 people might read it on my MA course, and the idea that not just in the UK but beyond into Romania, I really, you know, it's brilliant, you know. I feel so excited that it's having this reach, and thank you to everybody for reading it, and I hope very much that you enjoy it and take something from it. But it's even just a couple of hours entertainment, so thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Harriet.